Hi everyone, welcome to our today's webinar that is called Your Career, Your Vision, that is brought to you by Smartcat Academy. And our host today is Una Dimitrijevic. Hi Una.
Hello, can you guys see me?
I guess write in the chat if you can. So this webinar takes place on Smartcat Academy, which is an effort to bring together the best courses and webinars for translators. You can check out our other webinars by following our Crowdcast profile. You can also check out Smartcat when you have time, because it's a free platform where translators can work on their own projects and get new orders. Before we start, before I give the mic to Una, I want to tell you how to use this Crowdcast system. So on the right, as you can see, you have the chat. So please feel free to write anything you wish there. If you have a question, though, it's better to write it to the left, where you have the questions and topics tab. Feel free to suggest a topic to discuss or ask a question. The best questions are shorter ones, because we will not have that much time to read them all, so try to make them concise. Also, there is the polls tab, where you can vote for different options, so we can know better about you and your preferences. I think that's it. Also, this webinar is the second in a series of webinars with Una. We had our first one, which was called Fully Booked in 6 months, some months ago. So some of you have answered in the poll that they have not seen it and they want to know where to find it. I will just post once again the link to it. You can also find it on our Crowdcast profile, but just in case, you will now see in the chat the link. All right, I think that's it. Having said that, Una, please let us know what we will be talking about today.
All right, thank you so much, Vova, and thanks to Smartcat for hosting again this webinar. So yeah, the last one, if you haven't seen it, you can certainly check it out. It was really just an introduction to this little course that we'd like to set up. So the course is really aimed at aspiring translators, people who are just thinking about starting out or who have already just started working as freelance translators, to help you along to kind of go over different elements of what you need to do to set up to be a freelancer, a full-time successful freelancer, as soon as possible. So this particular webinar is really going to be about setting your own vision and your own goals. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the next hour. This one, I think, is going to be probably the most sort of PowerPoint heavy of the webinars we're going to do. We're going to be looking at quite a long presentation, because Bobo and I decided that there was a lot of information that we wanted to get through this time round, but we will have, of course, time for questions and answers, and we hope to continue going back and forth and answering your questions and getting to know you better as the webinars go on. Shall I launch straight into it, Bobo?
Okay, let us. So I will now focus on your screen, and we're all ears. 1 second, I will do this.
Okay, perfect. So just before we start, what I wanted to say to everybody was thanks so much for the feedback that you've been giving us and for letting us know a bit more about yourself. We have been reading all of your emails and all of your comments, even if we haven't always been able to get back to you individually. So again, thanks so much. It's really interesting for us to get to know our listeners, and we hope that that's a conversation that will continue really throughout this course. There was one particular comment that someone posted that I wanted to just discuss a little bit before we start, because I think it was really relevant. I think it was something that a lot of people probably think and don't necessarily say, and so I wanted to address it. And essentially what this person left in the feedback, I don't know how many of you were able to read it, but what she said was that she has the impression that there are so many webinars out there, there are so many blogs and groups and translators who are positioning themselves as experts in the field, that it's really hard to know where to get the real information, and that the impression she had was that nobody was really giving away the trade secrets as to how to really get those clients. So I wanted to let you know that, yeah, there's a whole lot of information out there. In your field of expertise that you want to get into, there will be experts who've been translating that for 20, 30 years, and they may be very available online, or they may not be very communicative, but you can certainly try and reach out to them. They're also marketing experts, like we had, Smartcat hosted a webinar just in marketing, and people who are also legitimately selling their marketing services and expertise to help you grow your business. And what I want to say straight away is that I'm not positioning myself as either one of those things. So if anything, I'm just a few years ahead of where most of you guys are standing today. And what I wanted to do in creating this webinar was to create something that I wish I had come across when I was starting out my freelancing business. So for me, this is a space where I can give you information about things that I tackled, because they're very fresh in my mind, the issues that I went through and how I solved certain problems in developing my freelancing career. And I want this to be a space where we also learn from each other. For me, it's very interesting to have Bova's input, to talk to him about how he tackles the same kind of career issues that I do, and learning from each other is going to be what we want this space to be about. And as for the second part of this question about the trade secrets out there that nobody wants to talk about, I remember having the same feeling very distinctly that, translators didn't want to tell you how really to get a client. They were hiding something. And as I went along, I think I realized that if there was a secret, if there was a magic formula for writing the perfect email that was going to get you a client every time, or a client even 50% of the time, that wasn't going to be kept a secret. Somebody out there would be trying to sell it. And I think the case is really that as any freelancing business, growing your translation business is going to be hard. It's not going to happen overnight, and there is no magic formula. There's nothing to replace hard work and research into your clients, because the method that's going to get you one direct client is not the same that's going to get you the next one. Some clients are going to love being contacted through Twitter or Facebook, and others are going to ignore those channels. Some are going to love receiving a little postcard from you, handwritten, telling them about your services, and others are going to throw that in the trash. So I think it's really about figuring out what works for you, what works for your clients, and simply learning from our experience, from mine and Bova's experience, and from our mistakes. So that's just something that I wanted to comment on before we start. Bova, is there anything that you want to add to that? Do you agree with some of what I said?
No, I totally agree with what you said. I mean, yes, I totally agree with what you said. So thanks.
Okay. Great, perfect. So let's go on then. We can delve into this presentation. So first of all, right, you guys can see my screen now. Being a translator. I wanted to go over this, which may seem evident to some and which may be something new to others. Being a translator is maybe not as straightforward as you might think. There are actually many ways to approach this career. So perhaps the most evident is whether you're going to be an in-house translator or a freelance translator. So of course, here we're going to be talking about freelancing, but quite legitimately, people might prefer to work for one company and work in their offices and have a steady 9-to-5 job with a steady income being a translator. And some people also combine these, and they may be a part-time in-house translator and a part-time freelancer. You can also, just in terms of being a translator, be a literary translator, a technical translator. So when you're a literary translator, you might also be working only directly for a single publishing house. And that's fine. And that's a topic that, again, we're not going to be delving into here simply because it's not a path that I've gone down, and there will be other sources of information if literary translation is really what interests you. Here we're going to be talking about technical translation, which is a much wider field that covers all sorts of different documents and all sorts of different services as well. So perhaps the most evident among these is proofreading and editing. What I'd say about this is that it's not necessarily always very clear what the difference is between the two. And if a client does ask you about proofreading and editing services, you always need to check what it is that they are really asking for, what services they really need. In a general way, I would say that proofreading can often be a more straightforward process. Proofreading a document is something that involves reading a text that's been written by a native speaker of your language, or also by someone who's not native, and it may have been translated, but you won't necessarily see the original translation. And you will be looking for probably minor faults, typing errors.
Sorry, Una, I guess we are having some problems with sound on your side. Some people have noted in the chat they're experiencing some issues. Let us try. You can, I think, try to reconnect, and then let's try to go on from this very place.
Oh gosh, you're breaking up actually. Hold on.
Sorry guys for these technical difficulties. Let me pop back to you. 1 second, where were I? Where am I? You can take a look at the cat for the time being. Okay, here I am. What Una was talking about is there is no such one thing as translation. All translation is many different fields that differ a lot between each other, and the ways that you will reach success in each of them is different in each of these fields. Do you hear me well now? Is my sound okay? Okay, mine as well. Thank you, Crowdcast, for bringing this. To refresh the page, maybe this will help. Just a second. Welcome back. Is it better now? One, two, 1, 2. Do you guys see me? Do you guys hear me? Okay, now thanks, Jose. Is everything fine with the sound? No improvement? Okay, that's cool. Let me try to talk some settings. Is there anyone who hears me well and who doesn't have any problem with the connection?
I can, yeah, it's really choppy for me too, but I can't really hear you.
Yeah, the same here.
Yeah, Boba's when Boba was talking, it was really choppy, and now
yeah, you too. Actually,
I don't know if anyone can hear me.
Yeah, I think we hear you.
Is it any better?
Well, it's kind of better. I don't know any of you guys who can hear us. Can you type in the chat if everything is fine? Maybe it's just a problem for some of us. Gone again.
Do you think it's Crowdcast or?
I think it's Crowdcast because we have the same problem from you and me, and some people don't hear anything. So I guess it's most likely a problem with Crowdcast. That's maybe. I will try to write to their support. We can come back in 5 minutes. Sorry for this technical difficulty. In 3:20 p.m. we will come back. Okay, please stay tuned.
In 5 minutes. Okay, we'll see you back here in 5 minutes.
Yeah, sorry for this.
Better.
Hello, do you hear me better now? Someone say something, please, or type something. It's interesting that no one types anything. Am I talking to myself? Thanks, Elena. Let us try to bring Una back on stage. Maybe it will be better for her. 1 second. Can you see me now? Can you hear me now? Without the video, can you at least hear me? No? Okay, so you can hear me. Anyone else? Anyone else in the room at all? Can you type something in the chat to show me that okay. Is the sound still breaking up or is it fine? Oh, great. So then just let's wait for Una to join, and sorry for this technical break of 10 minutes. I'll make sure to send some kind words to Crowdcast. Okay, Una is connecting, so let's pretend nothing happened. Now Jose cannot hear or see anything. Jose, try. Okay, if you can hear, try to reconnect. Refresh the page. Okay, say something.
Okay, I can hear and see you. Success. Can you hear me?
Let's hope it will keep going this way. So, did you have your presentation somewhere?
Yeah. Oh, I need to share my screen again.
I think so.
Screen
Hope it wasn't the
share.
thing that caused the problem. We'll pretend that nothing happened and start very
So,
yeah.
you know where roughly you'd want me to pick up from?
I think starting from in-house versus freelance, it was already a bit choppy, so you can start from here.
Let's try it again then. Ready?
I am.
Okay, perfect. So, back to this presentation. The difference between in-house and freelance translation. So, as I said, we're going to be focusing here, of course, on freelance translating. But there's another option available out there for translators, and that is working in-house, which means that you're working really for a company in their offices with a 9-to-5 and a steady income. And that might certainly suit people more than freelancing, some people in any case. You can also combine the two, so you might be a part-time in-house translator and a part-time freelancer. And as for document translation, I would kind of see two big distinctions here in terms of whether you want to be a literary translator or technical translator. And here we are really going to be talking about the technical side of things simply because I've never gone down the literary road for the time being, so I wouldn't have a lot to contribute there. But technical translation, of course, covers many, many different fields. And what other services can you include when you are a translator? Well, perhaps the most obvious is proofreading and editing. And the difference between these two is maybe not always as obvious as you might think. And if a client does ask you to proofread or edit a document, what you always want to check is maybe what they mean. Because proofreading often involves taking a text that could have been written by someone for whom that is the mother tongue or by a foreign speaker. And you often, if it has been translated, you won't see the original text. Proofreading should usually be lighter than editing, so you're looking for maybe spelling errors, typing mistakes, inconsistencies, these kinds of things. Editing will more often involve a more detailed revision of a text, and usually will include both the translated text and the original, so the source and the target. So you might be looking at, for example, also formatting, checking that everything has been translated, and this can usually involve a bit more work. So you can certainly, I would say editing is something that you will always be charging by the hour, whereas proofreading, I've tended to charge it by the word, although you can also charge it as a service that you provide by the hour. Okay, next you've got machine translation post-editing. So this is kind of an interesting one because a lot of translators really will refuse to do this. I took a course, I think it was SDL who provided this free online course about machine translation post-editing to find out what it was about. And essentially, there are certain texts that can be relatively well translated by machine. These might be, you know, long lists, databases, Excel sheets full of short bits of information. And post-editing will involve going through this to check that the different elements have been correctly translated. And it's actually a very different process to editing something that has been written by a human. So if this is something that interests you, it's really worth doing a course on understanding more about how it works, because it's not often as straightforward as it might seem, but it's certainly a service that you could consider. On-site document review. This basically will involve going to a particular business. Often it can be law firms who require this. They will have a ton of documents in a language they don't understand, and they need to find out what these documents are about and whether they need them to be translated. So as an on-site document reviewer, you might be asked to either orally or in written form tell them what each of these documents is really about, in order to help them understand what they need and what they might choose to then go on to translate. And this is something that will be charged by the hour as a service. Transcription. So in this case, you have an audio file that's sent to you, and you need to transcribe it. You need to write down what you hear, usually in your target language. If a client asks you for a transcription of an audio file into a different language, the way I would handle this is really charging for a translation service. So you're not only, you might be asked to transcribe it into the source language and translate it into that target language. If you do this kind of work, make sure that the dual nature of this work, the two services that you're providing, are reflected. Transcreation, this is something quite interesting. We had a whole webinar about it, so I'm not going to really go into it a lot, but Tanya last week or a couple weeks ago did a webinar on transcreation, which is essentially a sort of marketing translation for marketing. It's more creative than simply direct translation. It also involves a lot more market research, a lot more product research. Some people really like it because it's more creative, more free. Some people don't like it because it really involves being interested in marketing. But it's also something that is going to be charged by the hour rather than by the word. Software localization, this is something that I've never done, but the way I understand it is that essentially it's a type of transcreation for things like websites, maybe games. So you are translating something into a different culture. You are really altering the information to suit public in a different place, in a different culture. And finally, interpreting. This is something that you might consider, but I would also say that you should make sure to understand that it's really a very different skill from translating. When you're interpreting, you're doing so orally, so you really need to have an extremely good hold on both of the languages that you're going to be talking in, near bilingual, I would say, because you won't have the time to look up a dictionary, to look up your glossaries, to change your mind and go back and change things. I have worked in the past as a consecutive interpreter, and what this involves is being in a space with usually two people who don't speak each other's languages, and you are speaking after one of them has finished a sentence, so you're speaking in between the other two. And this is a really, really interesting task to do, but it's also very, very different and far easier from simultaneous interpreting, which is usually something that takes place in a court, for example, where translators have their own booths, they have their own headsets, and they are speaking at the same time as they are listening someone else speak. This is quite a different skill, and it's something that really you need to be trained to do. You cannot sort of go in and try it out on a whim. So just a quick list. I wanted to give you this idea of all kind of different services that you can think about offering when you're a translator, or essentially when you're a language services provider.
Now, I would also maybe add this, if we are talking about some additional services, there are quite a few services that you as a translator can take on, and using your language skills. For instance, there is copywriting, which is also synergetical with translation, because the more you copyright, the better a translator you become, and vice versa. And also there are such types of works as terminology research. It's probably not something you will be getting into from the very beginning, but if you have an experience, a background in some specific field, you can also look in this direction. And of course, there is also language teaching. It's okay, it's a totally different thing, but I'm just saying that maybe as we're talking about beginning translators, in this first 6 months, you will need to have some other income as well, so you can take a look at some adjacent services, let's say so. What do you think, Una?
Yeah, absolutely. And in copywriting, definitely something that I missed off that list. But yeah, what I wanted to highlight was that when you're starting out, have an open mind. Take into account all the different things that you're able to do with your linguistic skills, and approach the idea of being a translator in this way, with all of these ideas in mind about what you might want to try, what you certainly don't want to try. But yeah, thanks for the input.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, cool. So aside from this, what does being a translator mean? Well, again, the reality of being a translator can vary greatly. It can cover a lot of different things in terms of workload, job satisfaction, salary, etc., etc. So you will find online, I'm sure, many translators who complain about their work, who are really unhappy with the job that they do, who are always complaining about how little they are paid. And at the other end of the scale, you will have translators who work in a specialization that they are absolutely passionate about. They love their work, they are not overworked, they have a great work-life balance, and they earn, over 100 grand a year. And most of us are somewhere in between those two. Most of us are somewhere in the middle. So we will have all at some point to accept jobs that we might not be very interested in, because hopefully they're paying well. And sometimes we're going to have to accept jobs that we're not paid very much for, because we're really interested in doing them, because we love the topic, or because we hope that it's going to lead to something else. So in this regard, what I would say is that being translator is really a bit of a balancing act. You have to make sure that you do have this balance between doing work that you really like, but also being paid enough to live the way you want to live from this work. And in developing your business over the following months, you should always try and keep this balance in mind, and keep this tipping point in your favor. So what that means is also continuously searching for better paying clients and for more interesting jobs. And I know that at the beginning, you might feel like you're doing all sorts of jobs that you don't like, you're not interested in. But what's important to understand is that while this process may feel slow at the start, if you have a goal in mind and you keep reaching for it, and this is really what the essence of this webinar is going to be about, your situation will improve and it is going to get easier. So, are you made for freelance translating?
I also wanted to add a good comment from Tanya in the chat, that start doing what you already do best and like the most, and work in expanding the services you provide. I would also want to add that in the beginning, I love your metaphor with balancing, because yes, in the beginning, okay, we all want to do only the work we love, but sometimes the reality is different, and you have to do something you don't like. You have to have a clear goal and vision in mind. After all, that's what our webinar is about. I'm sure you will talk about it. One thing I also want to mention, that sometimes you're starting with something that you feel you are good at, that you know about, but then it turns out that you are passionate about something totally different. For instance, I have a background in physics and mathematics, and naturally I started my translation career as a technical translator. But somewhere 5 or 10 years into it, I realized that I'm much more comfortable with humanitarian translations, with literary translation, marketing translation, and so on. So try to listen to yourself, to your intuition, and to your inner voice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all really good advice. And what I wanted to say really at this point was, when you start to think about going into this career, you do really need to think about if you're someone who's made for freelancing. And when I tell people what I do as for a living, I often have one of two reactions. People either say to me, oh my goodness, that's so great, you get to work from home and you get to be your own boss, you know, you're so lucky. Or people will say to me, oh, I could never do that. You must be so boring. You're at home all day, like you're just by yourself, you don't see anybody else. And I think that these two reactions that I get really reflect the fact that being a freelance anything really is not for everybody. You have to go down this path with a clear idea in mind of whether this is something that you are just as a person, that's something that you're going to be good at because it's something that you're going to enjoy. So just the slide that I've got up at the moment is a few examples of how you can think about this. And if I was talking to someone who's considering freelance translating, what I would ask them is, are you someone who's, you know, good at motivating yourself, or are you someone who really needs other people to get you going all the time? Do you seek independence? Do you really want to rely on yourself and your own skills and abilities? Or do you actually really enjoy working as a team where everyone has, you know, a very specific task and it's all very structured? Are you someone who's organized and self-sufficient? Or are you someone who actually really needs supervision and guidance to accomplish daily tasks? And finally also, do you really like working a 9 to 5, like an office job? Is that something that suits you? Or are you really eager to actually have more flexible working hours and work at a different pace? So something, again, I would say, I would encourage people to consider. Just to give you a bit of an idea of how I came to do this job, I worked in lots of different types of jobs throughout my 20s. And what I found was that I was really bored in office environments. I didn't like having that kind of strict schedule. I didn't like having endless meetings and having to report everything. I didn't enjoy having other people telling me what to do each day. And I didn't feel like I was advancing as much as I would like to be in my job. And for a really long time, I had this idea, oh, one day I'd like to be, you know, a freelance translator and do more translating. I was always doing a little bit, but it was never my principal job. And I never really, for years, kind of pushed myself, motivated myself in that direction. And I think it was really related to the negative feelings I had about the professional situation that I was in. And so I spent years sort of dwelling in this dissatisfaction about my personal situation, my professional situation. And I didn't have a clear goal in mind. I just knew that, you know, something needed to change. I needed to change something about my career, but I didn't know exactly what I was aiming for. So I think that if you do have this goal, if you're in a position where you want to be a freelancer, but you don't have something very clear and specific in mind, it can be really hard to actually launch yourself onto a path that you can really barely see. So I would say is that if you feel like you have the right personality and the right mentality for freelancing, and also crucially, if you really love languages and you enjoy translating, that's very important, then you need to first define your goals. And as you do this, try and imagine where you'd like to ideally see yourself in 1 or 2 years' time. And in doing so, really try and think on the positives. So this is what I wanted to tell you a bit about. So instead of thinking what I was doing initially, things like, oh, I don't like my boss and I hate getting up early and I'm so bored at work, what you need to do is kind of just switch, a mental switch, and think in positive terms. So that would be, I want to be my own boss. I want to work according to my own body clock. I want to work on really interesting projects, on this kind of project, and I want to be earning X amount. And so as you do this, essentially, this is going to help you fix your personal goals. And these are going to be very specific to you. And in doing so, you just need to ask yourself a set of questions. And so this is kind of what I hope that this presentation is really going to help you with. So what are the questions you need to ask yourself? Well, first of all, what are my aims in starting a freelancing career? It's going to be different for everyone. For some people, it's going to be to earn more money. For some people, it's going to be to have more free time. It might be because you want more control over your schedule, or because you actually want to travel and you want to be able to bring your job with you wherever you go. Next question is going to be, what are my timeline goals? So again, this is something that's going to depend on what deadline you have in mind, on your personal life situation. Do you have a job where it's, you've got a contract and it's ending in 6 months? Is your family situation going to change? Are you going to be moving house? What's happening in your life, and by what time do you need to achieve certain things? Normally, when do you need to achieve financial independence from your freelancing career? And importantly also, how much time presently can you dedicate to developing your activity? How much time can you set aside in your current personal and professional situation to achieve these goals? The next question I would ask is, what is my financial situation? So whilst you're setting up your career, can you rely on someone else? Can you rely on your parents and a spouse for a few months to help you? Do you have enough money saved up so that you can work on this project full time? And how much do you need initially to earn to cover your basic costs? Your initial, goal in terms of finances needs to be, of course, something that's going to help you live correctly. But also, you can set a financial goal with the idea that in the months and years to come, that salary goal is going to be increasing. Very importantly, also, I'd say, what are my interests and passions? So this is something, Vova just mentioned. You might have one professional background, but actually maybe that your interests and your hobbies are something that are going to come into your freelancing career. This is something you can start looking into. You can even list what are the things I like to read? What are the magazines that I'm subscribed to? What are the kind of websites I'm on every day? Because that is something that you might be able to apply also to services that you start to offer in the coming months. So what I would say is ask yourself the right questions, and that way you can try and set yourself a reasonable objective for where you want to be professionally in a year's time. And what I mean by reasonable here is something that's ideal for you, but that's also conceivable. You don't want to say, in 6 months, I want to be earning $10,000 a month. It's unlikely to happen. So you do want to set yourself a goal that's going to be realistic and that you can continuously then improve on. So I will send all of you who are here, I will send all of you these slides so that you can do this yourself later on. But I would really encourage you, whether you have started freelancing or not, to take a moment, take 15 minutes, take half an hour, and consider all of these questions. And once you've done so, you can start filling in these blanks. So in this many years or months, I would like to be working this many hours and this many days per week. So initially, you have to think about the fact that you're going to be spending more time on annex activities, like marketing your services. But later, you don't want to find yourself working 60, 70 hours a week on low-paid jobs and barely getting by, when your initial aim, the one that you will have filled in here, was to only work part-time. So make sure you set yourself a clear goal and that you keep working towards it, just in terms of the number of hours that you're working per week. Then I want to be earning this much every month. Again, as I said, don't start too high. Your rates are going to grow as you gain experience. So just make sure that this amount that you fill in here reflects your living costs and also reflects how much you intend to be working. So don't aim for a full-time salary if you intend to work part-time. Then what do I want to be translating? Websites, financial reports, board game instructions, I don't know, but try and have an idea of what kind of specialization you'd like to focus on in your translation, even though it might go in another direction. I had an idea in mind of what I wanted to focus on and sent out lots and lots of CVs with that goal in mind, and ended up doing something quite different and then coming back, swinging back to that goal a few years later. But it's good to have a little list of things that you would like to be translating in a year or so. And finally, what else do you want to be trying out? This refers to the list of services that we just talked about at the beginning. So proofreading, interpreting, transcreating. You can really think about expanding your business into other areas aside from purely translation. And you may discover that there's actually more work in those areas in your specific language combination. So it's important to actually think about the skills that you want to develop and the new services that you might want to start offering to clients in a certain amount of time.
It's a really interesting point, because I hope my keyboard clicking doesn't interfere too much with your speaking, because I'm typing in the chat. But on your questionnaire, let's say, so I wanted to say that it's really important, because when you write things down, you fix them in your mind and in your subconscious mind, and if you keep looking at them, maybe writing them down over and over again from time to time, making some notes on where you are right now, it's not like you are fixing these goals now and you will not come back ever again. You can do it like every 2 weeks, see where you are, what's changed since the last time. I think it really helps setting all your mental forces. Sorry, I already told to Pavel in the chat, I'm talking some mystical stuff now, but I do believe in it. I've seen it work on myself. So when you fix all your mindset on something, then a lot of things will come that you don't expect will come.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think that that's also something I would focus on, is to say, you write down these goals, but you don't worry if in 6 months you're not quite where you thought you would be, because you keep realigning them as well. Your path is going to take you off in some maybe unexpected directions. But what's important is to focus your mind on, what your ultimate goals are. And those might change as well. You might decide that actually I only want to work part-time, even though I thought I wanted to do full-time. Something else came up and your goals change, and that's fine. But actually writing them down, having them in mind, gives you a really clear perspective on what you're working towards. Absolutely. So that's definitely what I wanted to say in this slide. It's
I'm running
about motivating yourself.
Train.
No, not at all. And motivating yourself, I think that having clear, positive goals is certainly what helped me to motivate myself and to launch myself in the freelancing path. And if you do have a goal, it's also going to help you define the steps that you need to take to reach them. So it's going to help you to decompose your path into lots of little segments to say, okay, if I want to get there, then these are the steps that I need to go one by one in order to get there. And it can also help you get stuck in the wrong place. And I think that's important, because when you have this professional goal in mind, it will help you to actually say no to some projects in order to free up your time to search for the projects that you really want to be doing. Because if you don't go looking for the projects that your vision is focused on, those projects are probably not going to come and find you. So many translators, after a year or so, they find that they're working full time and they're sort of getting by, but they're not earning that much, and they're doing things that really bore them, and that's the worst. I mean, when you've got so much potential, when you have your own boss, you can do what you want with your career, then it's really sad to get stuck in a place where you're actually completely dissatisfied with it, because you're the one who's in charge. So having these goals, it can help you to move beyond that, free up time, and dedicate time to searching for the next step that's going to bring you towards your goal. So the next point, once you've done this may seem counterintuitive, but once you've set your goals, you want to turn around and look at yourself, look at where you're standing right now. And you may think that this is more evident, but actually I think a lot of people don't take this into account enough. So your starting point means considering things like what qualifications do you have, whether linguistic or otherwise? What previous experience do you have? So a lot of translators who just start out, they feel like they don't have anything to fill their CV with because they haven't done lots of translating projects. But actually, if you're starting this career, it's probably because you've used languages in lots of ways before, and you can really start thinking about, oh yeah, that time when I worked there, I actually sort of interpreted in that meeting, and I once translated those documents for my cousin because she needed them. So you can actually start, dig deep and look back at what you've done and try and bring those things out and promote them. Next, what's your professional background? So again, think back quite far. You might realize that something that you did when you were a teenager can come in use, because any job that you've had can be a benefit to your translation career, because it's something that you have even just very passive knowledge about the terminology of that particular area. And it might be something that you'd like to look into, or just, see whether in that particular industry that you've worked with or that you've worked in before, there is need for translation. What personal networks can you rely on? So aside from professional networks, aside from your past colleagues, if you've had many years working in some other industry, who are the people around you? Your old university friends, what are they doing now? What industries are they working in? What about your extended cousins? What about your spouse's workmates? What do they do? Who can you reach out to? I think this was something that I really kind of didn't put enough focus on at the start. And what I've realized is that now, a few years on, almost all of the major direct clients that I have, the major people that I get a lot of my work from, came from personal networks, came from people who knew someone who recommended me. So this is why it's really important to actually talk about what you do and make sure that people around you know what your new professional endeavor is and what services you are providing in the context of your freelancing career. Who can recommend or vouch for you? So it's always important to have a few references on your CV for your linguistic work. And this might not necessarily be, paid projects that you've done if you're just starting out, but what would be great is that if you have at least volunteer experience. So when I started out, I actually started out interpreting in a refugee center, and I was doing, some translation for them. And even though I was just doing that out of my own free time, it gave me some references, and that led to other work. So if you don't have that, you might consider doing some volunteer translation for organizations that you really like, or for your friends. Maybe your friends are developing a business or a website and need something translated, and then they can be your references. And finally, what skills can you apply? So you might not realize it, but aside from your linguistic skills, maybe you have tech skills, marketing skills, design skills. Have you made a website before? How about communication skills? These are all the things that can really help you in growing your business. And if you don't have them, would you like to develop them? Is that something you want to do? Spend a bit of time to learn more about marketing, to learn more about time management, look into online courses. There's lots of free online courses as well, lots of MOOCs, those big multi-user online courses that can help you with different areas that don't necessarily relate strictly to translation, but that are very useful when you're developing any freelance business. So this one included. And when you ask yourself this, you need to take time to question, well, do I need to gain more qualifications in my subject area? Depending on your country, you might find that people require you to have certain qualifications. Is it worth getting more qualifications in an area of specialization that you want to focus on? So if you're really interested in something, but that's very competitive, well, maybe spending a few months and gaining qualification in that, whether it's an online qualification or offline, is going to then help you when you're looking for jobs in that sector. You need to ask yourself if you can invest time and money in further study in that case, and what you want to focus on in terms of the skills that you need to develop. And that's really important. I mean, I think that identifying where you are and what you need to do to kind of boost yourself at this point is going to be hugely influential in terms of how quickly and how successfully you develop your business. So basically, once you've done that, you're going to be reevaluating your goals. You're going to be looking at, okay, so I really wanted to, translate in this area, but I need to do like a 6-month online course, and then that will give me that qualification, and I'm going to do this. And so your timeline might change, or you might realize that once you've done this research, the subject area you had in mind, they maybe don't require that much translation. Maybe they don't actually have finances for translation. You'll find that some very interesting sectors actually just don't have that much funding, and that they're not prepared to pay for translation. They rely on volunteer translation. And you might also decide to look at slightly different services based on some of the skills that you realized you had that you didn't really think about. And again, you might want to reevaluate the income level that you aspire to. So reevaluating your goals at this initial stage is just as important, I would say. And reevaluating your goals, as Boba mentioned, is something that you're going to be doing on quite regularly. Every time that you advance, you learn something new, you can reevaluate your goals in terms of all of these different aspects. So that's it from me. Like I said, this was a long presentation. They're not going to be this long, but I will send you these slides, and that's my information up there right now. I'd love to hear from you. It's always going to be interesting to have your feedback and to learn more about you and learn more about what you guys are looking to learn about. And yeah, we can head over to Q&A, Boba, I think.
Yeah, it's funny that now we will pop back. Let me find my video. Okay, here I am. It's interesting that we precisely fit in the time that was meant for this webinar. So, but anyway, I think we will stay on for some time. I wanted to go back to, not to go back, but to talk about your the one before the last slide, when you said about digging deeper. I think it's very important because, maybe if I share my story, as I said, I started in a totally wrong place where I ended up. And if back then I had paid more attention to my interest, and if I could dig deeper, then I would, of course, remember that I have a knack for philosophy, psychology, marketing, and so on. But at that point, I did not think about it. I just thought that if I'm a physics graduate, I must be doing something along these lines. I was actually a first-year student, so it was like a side income for me, for some pocket money, let's say so, which in a while turned out not fitting my pockets. But anyway, I wanted to say that sometimes you will find yourself in an awkward position because you will be writing CVs and you will not know what to put in there. Like if you don't have any experience, write what you are actually interested about, and don't be afraid to mention something that matters, even if it's not a job you had, or I don't know, something you translated, because even in CVs, human approach matters, I guess. Guys, you can ask questions, by the way. We had some questions, but I don't think they're actually questions, more of personal points of view. I think Mark asked one, and let me read it out. I will then also read the one by Anna. So Mark said, and guys who are still with us, feel free to ask your questions, especially if you are just starting out in the field. Feel free to ask anything about setting goals or starting out. We will try to brainstorm it. So Mark asks, as for setting goals, the main goal for me right now is to break free of my dependency on one large cloud-based agency and to obtain more work from 2 other agencies, as to find time to keep in contact with one former client and contact another potential client. In short, this means taking time off from actual translation work at the cloud agency in order to invest it in completing another agency's translation tests and writing to people. So as a short version, I guess it's about spending time on something but translation if you feel yourself a slave maybe, or if you feel yourself locked in with one agency and you want to find some other sources, you have to stop doing it, and then you don't have any income for this time. So maybe we can talk about how you handle such situations. What do you think, Una?
Yeah. I think this comes into the category of what I called getting stuck. So it might be that you get stuck because you're not earning enough, you're not earning as much as you'd like to be, or you might be stuck because you're just not enjoying the jobs that you're doing. And in either case, the important thing is that you realize the time that you take off from translating and invest in doing all that other stuff, the marketing essentially, but reaching out to other potential clients.
We're already losing the sound.
Oh, really?
Now I hear you. Could you come again?
You hear me?
Now, yes.
Is that better?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that time is investment. That time is just time that's going to come back to you later on, twofold, threefold, fourfold. And I know that it's hard to initially say, okay, well, you know, for these 2 hours, I'm not going to be earning money, but you need to decide how much you can set aside, and you need to set aside some time. And that might be your weekend. That might be that you're saying, okay, I still need to work full time because I simply need to earn that much. And then you're going to be devoting your Saturday or half of your Saturday to doing your marketing. But taking that time out is crucial. It's crucial. Otherwise, you're never going to move forward. And your job as a freelance translator is not just to be a translator. Your job is to market your business, to advance your business, to look for clients, to build your websites, etc., etc. So, yeah, your job is more than just translating a text, and that's something you do have to bear in mind.
I think one interesting approach to this is, because translators talk a lot about billable, non-billable time. Make non-billable time at least accountable. I mean, to track the time you spent on different tasks, because sometimes it is dull, it is boring to do anything but translation, but sometimes you can make a challenge out of it. Count the time you spend on, I don't know, building a website or sending CVs to other agencies, then try to become better, and they treat it like some quest that you're, like you said, as an investment, but also as a challenge, as a quest that you're taking on to win the further level or something like this.
Yeah, I mean, what I mentioned in the last webinar we did was that I can only translate maybe 4, maximum 5 hours a day. I think most of us just don't have the sort of mental capacities to focus on such an intellectually challenging task for that long. Your brain sort of burns itself out. So you are either not being very efficient. You can spend, 8 hours in a day in front of your computer screen translating, but you're probably not translating very efficiently, and you'd be better off spending a few hours less translating, doing it more effectively, and setting out an hour to do something else, to redo your CV and to make up, a list of potential clients that you want to research, for example.
Exactly. I'm taking a look now at the polls we had. When you asked what is the main reason you want to be a freelance translator, the majority of people, actually the vast majority, said that they need to adapt their career to lifestyle, family situation. So for quite a lot of people, it is a matter of need because they have some situation that calls for being a freelancer. I think in many cases, for instance, some mothers, I don't know what the correct term for this, but I mean when people are on maternity leave, women are on a maternity leave, they have to do this. So that's a popular place to start freelancing. For me, it was different. Guys, anyone who wants to ask any more questions? We had this also message from Anna in the questions, but actually I didn't find a question there. So I like the story of Anna, by the way. Anyone else? We want to ask you questions.
Hopefully I've asked enough questions in the different slides. It's like giving everybody 50 questions to ask themselves, and by this time
Yes,
in a
yes,
couple of weeks
exactly.
as the homework. Answer your own questions for yourself. I mean, I think this is what I think is important about realizing that you have very individual personal goals, and that when you learn about freelancing or translating or marketing, you have to consider your own personality within that. So you always have to bear in mind what you're good at, what you like to do, and to focus on that. And helping people develop their freelancing career really involves also focusing on what people's individual strengths are. And that's why also coaching is important. That's also why it's a service I offer, because I think that having general information about how you can develop a freelancing career is great, but actually people struggle often with very personal issues and feel like they can advance in a certain direction because they feel that's the direction they have to take, when in fact there may be more options available to them than they realize.
Yeah, I think having someone to guide you, a mentor or a coach, is a great way of doing it, because with all webinars existing, you will still have your special situation that needs special approach. We had a couple of questions here. One is from Max. He asks, how important is it to have a specific area in terms of subject matter? What do you think?
What do I think? Well, I think that in general, yes, it's important. I think it's going to not only help you to focus, because if you position yourself simply as a general translator, it's going to be hard to focus on where to look for clients, quite simply. And you might find yourself, I think being a general translator without a specialization is the easiest way to fall into the trap of doing jobs you don't like, because you're doing the job that all the people who are specialized are completely ignoring. That's one of the reasons. I would also say that specialization is often more lucrative work because you have a knowledge area. So you have specific knowledge of terminology or an understanding of an industry, and that is valuable. That is, it can be as valuable as your language skills, and that's going to be reflected in the pay that you're going to have. Saying that, it's not absolutely essential, especially when you're starting out. You don't have to position yourself that way, but I would say consider, maybe if you don't feel like you have a specialization in mind, like you've only ever studied languages or whatever you've done before, you want to step far away from, you don't want to be working in that area at all, you can keep in mind things that you might want to work towards. So for example, I actually really like that, but I don't have any qualifications in it. And, look at online courses, consider gaining additional qualifications, and consider beginning to focus on some area of specialization. Would you agree, Baba?
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think that if you feel like ambivalent between some two options, you can, for instance, create two CVs that you will be sending out to specialized agencies if you have some totally different areas for your specialization. But from a point of view of an agency, at least, I don't think with the direct clients, CVs are of much importance at all. But with agencies, they love seeing specializations. For instance, when I'm looking for, if I need to outsource job to someone, I would rather outsource it to someone with some specific field of specialization. Max also asks how long would it take to get such a specialization? Well, several years, I guess. I mean, you will not be getting it like overnight. You will be translating and becoming better at it with every job you complete, I guess. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I would say I don't even have one specialization. I maybe put out about 5 different topics that I generally translate in. That might be the case for some people, and some people will be highly specialized in one topic. And it really depends. Initially, when I started out, I had this clear idea in mind that I wanted to translate in the area where I have my master's, which is European affairs. So it's like European policy and things like that. And when I sent out feelers and sent out loads of CVs to agencies, most of the jobs I ended up doing weren't really related to that area. They were related to corporate communication and energy. And I sort of developed almost a, you know, I don't know if I could say an expertise, but certainly a kind of specialization in those fields too, because they began to interest me. And so I began to put them forward as well as areas that I'd like to work more in. And just later, just with the way things happen, because you can't plan for everything, I ended up getting a lot more clients in the field of European affairs, of political, social policy, which is what I initially wanted to do. But you never know. You never know, and it's good to keep a mind open and good to have, you know, a few ideas in mind and see where that takes you.
Yeah, for myself, I would say, for instance, I specialize in, let's say, so humanitarian translations from and to Russian, and I also do marketing translations, but I have one website, russianist.com, which is totally only for literary and humanitarian translation. I wouldn't put there, hey guys, I want to translate your press release or copy or something. For that, I had another website that is now turned off because I don't have time for this, and because I decided that I want to focus on this humanitarian part. For others, it's different. So I think we can go on to one other question from Julia. I feel stuck with sending resumes to agencies, no end in sight, and no jobs from those agencies either. Your rate on return is proving true, Una. So the one that you were talking about on the last webinar, about 1-2% return rate, right? I have an industry business in mind that I would like to reach, but I feel as a beginning translator, my chances of convincing them to give me the job are slim. Do I need a website to look more official? So there are 3 questions in one, I guess. The first one is how to not feel being stuck sending resumes to agencies. Second one is, can you reach out to a business if you're just beginning? And the third one, do I need a website? So.
Okay, so I think that a couple of those you mentioned, a couple of those questions you kind of partly answered last time, which was, well, in terms of the website, first of all, you don't need a website, but it's good to have one. And if you have this very clear idea in mind of what you want and how you want to position yourself in the translation market and within a specific industry, then you might want to focus on that and have a really good website that just positions you within that industry. And also maybe, I don't know, on LinkedIn, connect to all of the people, and on LinkedIn and on Twitter, connect to all of those people working in that area, because you might be able to meet them in that way and go to industry events, maybe, if that's something that happens in that particular area that you're interested in. So devote some of your time to focusing on that. And I mean, you may not have prior experience in that area, and you may want to do some volunteer translations and something that's relevant, so that again you can show that experience and you can have some references and some people who vouch for your work. But also take part of your time to reach out to other types of clients who will be more willing to work with translators with less experience, and those might in fact be agencies. So yeah, again, it's a small return rate, but at least you can spend not very much time reaching out to each individual agency, because it might be a case of simply sending a CV, a generalized CV, filling in an online application. So I know it's boring, but agencies do get back to you, and it's worth spending, you know, maybe an hour a day, depending on how you want to organize your time, reaching out to agencies as well. I think the best way to approach it is to dedicate certain periods of time to each type of client that you want to consider, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know whether the positive returns you're going to have in a month's time are going to be from agencies, or whether they're going to be from direct clients. You know, my experience or Boba's experience is just what happened to us, and it might not be what happens to you at all. So you've got to put out as many feelers as possible in order to see what comes back and then work from there. That's what I would say. What do you think?
And the last one, or did you answer all the 3? Because let me see once again. About website, okay. To add my 2 cents, maybe also about reaching out to businesses. You know, attention span of people nowadays is very short. the same relates to prospects, really. And when you think that you will be reaching out with your LinkedIn profile and someone will dig it so deep to think about how you don't have any experience, they will not be spending so much time on it. So if you have a nicely looking LinkedIn profile that mentions your strengths, then mentions maybe your education, I guess it won't matter that much that you don't have much experience, because for direct clients, even more so than for agencies, the first impression is what matters most, I guess. What do you think, Una? Because if they like how you approach them, they will not care that much if you are if you work for 5 years, or you have been working for 5 years, or 3 years, or 1 year.
Yeah, it really depends on the sector, I would also say, because some people will ask, okay, what's your knowledge of this, area? Because for them, it's very important that maybe legal work, for example, that you have a real understanding of the documents that you're translating. So certain direct clients might ask for a lot of experience or qualifications. And some, as you say, are simply going to go on word of mouth because somebody said, oh, my friend's a translator, she can do that. Or because they meet you at an event and they like the look of you, and so they remember you when they need a translation. So you never know, but I would say don't think that you cannot start reaching out to clients because you don't have 2 years of experience under your belt. You absolutely can. You absolutely can.
Exactly. And about sending resumes to agencies, I don't know how you are sending them, but maybe we'll have a webinar about this later. There are some cool plugins for Gmail, for instance, like Mixmax, which I'm using now to, for instance, gather your opinion about webinars after it. You can really, I think, optimize the time you spend on it. I'm assuming that you're doing it in some manual mode, like copy pasting the text, finding the email, putting in the 2 fields, sending it out, and then you will probably spend 2 hours to send, I don't know, like 20 or 40 emails. But with these plugins, you will be able to send 100 at a time, and it will not take that much of your mind power and motivation and all this stuff. So check out for now Mixmax if you are not using it, and sometime later I think I will also give a webinar on how to better approach all these email tasks that take so much of our time.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Bobo. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that webinar. And as far as our course is concerned here, I know that we're going to dedicate a webinar to just reaching out to clients, reaching out to direct clients and to agencies, and essentially looking for work. That is, this comes after this kind of goals and visions part, which we really needed to take a look at today. But I know people ask about that all the time, and it is hugely important. So we do want to dedicate a whole webinar to that.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of that, to the 24 most interested people that are still in the room, and to the ones who will be watching it in replay, this webinar is one of a series. Me and Una and me are planning to make a whole course that will be aimed at aspiring translators. The reason we are not promoting or marketing it now as such is that we want to find the best approach and the best way to engage you and to give something useful to you. But maybe, Una, you can also take a couple of words about the whole course and what do you think it will be like. I think it will be interesting for the guys to know.
Yeah, I don't have the list of the different webinars here in front of me, but I know that we're planning on doing probably about 6 in total, and looking at different things like time management for translators, and reaching out to clients and keeping clients happy, and that kind of stuff. So we have different segments in mind, different topics in mind that are going to be less presentation heavy than this one, that hopefully will involve a lot more, talking to all of you, going back and forth, talking about your individual aspirations and challenges. And the aim also, the reason again that we haven't published the whole course information in detail from the start is that we want to be able to adapt it based on the feedback that we get from everybody watching, and based on the issues that people want us to discuss and that they're having the most trouble with, that maybe we haven't even considered talking about, but we want to be able to adapt to that and really create this community again. That's what I keep focusing on and insisting on, is that we want to create a supportive community for aspiring translators where people can quite openly discuss their problems and where there's, you know, no judgment and just trying to give each other our own ideas and swap ideas. And yeah, that's what I hope.
Great. So then we can, I guess, wrap it up on this positive note. Patient, sorry, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Maybe it's patient, sorry, because it's probably French or not French. Anyway, viewer is asking if we will send the presentation. So I guess we will send it out, and we will also put it out in the forum. Maybe tomorrow I will come back to you to ask your opinion, as you already received for the previous webinars. So you will surely get everything you watched here. You will also have the video replay, including the 20 minutes when we were struggling with technical difficulties. So I guess that's it. Thank you, Una, very much for this. I think it was really homely. Is it the right word, homely? I love the atmosphere we had here. I'm looking forward to have further webinars with us. And by the way, next week we will be talking game localization. So feel free to come, everyone. And feel free to check out Smartcat Academy and Smartcat if you haven't already. And make sure to write to Una if you have any questions for her that you would like to be handled in a more personal way, right?
Yeah, of course. I'd be really interested to hear back from people. I will send out the presentation to everybody who's attended in the next day or so, and then I'll be away for a few weeks. So now I look forward to looking at the other Smartcat webinars on replay when I get back.
All right then. Thanks, Una. Thanks everyone for coming, and see you soon. Ta-ta. Bye.
Bye.